Hello, everybody, and welcome to Superlist's AI-powered list editing. It should be an exciting session. Before we get started, I'll share a couple little housekeeping details here. So the audio is broadcast through your speakers. Hopefully, you tested those when you signed in. If you have any issues, refresh your browser. Recordings will be available after the event. And please use the Q&A to submit any questions that you have for Eric. And with that, I will turn this over to Eric.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. Sorry I can't be on stage and see all of you, but it's nice to be here virtually, and I love to see the dancing and things, so glad to see there's energy out there. It's great to be here. Great to see those who I can see. And excited to talk about super lists, creating Blackbaud lists with AI. So let me share my screen here. I have a uploaded slide deck. I don't know how it all looks on your end, but this is actually going to be a modified version of that. So let me share this too, and I'll post the link to this at the end. So I made a few changes, but you could download the other one too if it has it available for download. I don't know what that looks like, but it has most of this, but I just added a few things that I wanted to be able to talk about here. So this is an experiment. It's in the early stages, and I wanted to run this by everybody sooner than later. This is something I've been wanting to do for, I don't know, a year and a half or so, and finally got around to, and thought, oh, this is kind of cool. I want to see what people are thinking. And I wanted to see, there may already be better ways of doing this. I don't know. And so I wanted to run this by the community and see if maybe this is something we can collaborate on. This is something that could potentially go open source. It's just something I'm kind of kicking around right now, but wanted to talk to people about basically. So let me try to keep an eye on the comments and things here too. All right, so what we're looking at is, here's an example of the kind of thing, when we work with Blackbaud data or any type of data, we often end up with these things that look like spreadsheets in some way, right? These are data tables. These are things with rows and columns. So here's an example. Let's say we want to create a spreadsheet of students with their email addresses and their grade levels. So there are a few different ways of doing this. And before I get to that, though, if you're working with data, you'll often have like these intermediary tables, like, okay, I need to do this, and then I'm going to transform this, and I end up with another table or another spreadsheet. So just kind of the idea of data tables is what we're looking at, or spreadsheets, things you would open in Excel, and they have rows and columns. Yeah. So, but we'll use this as an example to kind of springboard off this. So one way of doing this is an advanced list in Blackbaud. And for those of you who have worked with Blackbaud data or developers, you're probably familiar with this. This is just one possible way. This may be, this specific example, we may be able to do this with a basic list too. I'm sure there are many out there who are more familiar with basic lists than I am. So you probably know, but this is just for the sake of example. Okay, not that we couldn't do this with a basic list, but we'll look at how we would do it with an advanced list here. So again, the example was we wanted to get students with their email addresses and their grade levels. All right, so here in our advanced list editor that many of you are familiar with, to do this, we would need to get 3 objects over here. They're called objects. These would correspond with like database tables. Yeah, if you're familiar with the database. We've got user base, user register, and grade level. So we would need all 3 of these, and what we would do is first we'd go constituent information on the left here. This is our groupings. So we've got a constituent information group. We would click user base, we would click user register, and then we would go under platform, and there's a grade level object. So then we would add that as well. So then we've got all 3 of these. So we need some technical knowledge to set this up, right? We need to know, first of all, which group contains grade level. We need to know that it's nested under platform here. We need to know that these 3 things, user base, user register, and grade level, are related. They don't, you can't get email addresses and grade levels from one single object named something like student. We have to get it from these 3. And we also need to know that we have to add user base and user register first before we can get to grade level. It's not a whole lot of, but it's some technical knowledge, right? As opposed to your domain knowledge, which is a student is in a grade level. Okay, so Once we've done that, then we can go to the Display Fields tab in the Advanced Lists Editor, and we choose what fields we want. So we click Select Fields, and we've got user ID, last name. I really should have done preferred last name here. Now, okay, now that that's available, but we just have last name here. Then we've got preferred or first name, and then we've got a grade level abbreviation, and then their email address. So again, stuff you're all familiar with. This is where we would select the display fields. We just put check marks next to the ones that we want. All right, then we would click preview, and we end up with, or run if we save the list, we end up with this data table, and we can click the export button up here in the upper right, and we can get a CSV file that we can open in Excel, or we can do anything with. We can SFTP it to some server somewhere, whatever we need to do with it. So that's all well and good, and I mean that. I think it's a really powerful tool. I think it's a really kind of cool way of making a user-friendly query editor for Blackbaud's databases. There are some opportunities that we see that could make it even better, cooler, easier, more powerful, what have you. One thing is, like we talked about, there's some technical knowledge that we need here to work with this thing, like user base, user register, grade level, how they're nested, how they're related to each other. So it would be cool if we could decrease the technical knowledge that we need to work with it. A possible opportunity, make it faster to make changes. What if in addition to email address, we also want to get the student's phone number? With Advanced List Editor, we might have to go back and look on our objects again. We have to look in our fields again and check some new boxes and make some changes. Maybe we could make that faster and easier somehow. Another possible opportunity is, what if we could edit the SQL query that this creates? If you've worked with these, you know there's a tab where you can actually view the SQL query that is executed. Blackbaud runs that query against their database, but you can't edit it. And it's understandable why, but well, for one reason, probably security. They don't just want somebody running arbitrary queries against their database. Also, maybe it would have been hard to translate the query back into the editor. But anyway, it's just not possible through the Advanced List Editor. But what if, right? Could be cool if it were. And another opportunity was, what if we could just speak what we wanted? I want a list of students with their email addresses. Speak it into your microphone and it happens. Right? That's kind of cool if we could do that. And lastly, what if we could reuse across multiple schools? That's something, to my knowledge, you can't do with advanced lists. If you're working with the Blackbaud API, you can do it with API queries, but I don't think, and maybe probably some of you will prove me wrong now that I'm making this claim publicly. No, I don't think you can say like export an advanced list template and then import it into another school. And if you're a developer who works at a single school, that's not a problem. But if you work with 10, 20, 30, if you work with dozens of schools, you might want to be able to say, hey, I like this advanced list. I want to use it in many different schools for my product or something. And that's not possible, as far as I know, with advanced lists how they are today. You would have to click and select each field and rebuild the advanced list in each school where you wanted it, to my knowledge. We'll find out, I guess, if somebody knows otherwise. All right, so taking that, I came up with this name. Doesn't mean that it competes with advanced lists. It's just a difference, and I wanted some name that distinguishes it from advanced lists. So I came up with super list. This is a different type of list. And let's look at how this works. First, let me show you what the goal is here. This is a pre-recorded demo. Okay, we'll get to a live demo soon though. But the goal is, I want to be able to say, I want students with email addresses and grade levels, and you click generate list, and there it is. And then you've got an export button, and you can do other stuff with it. But that's kind of the dream, if you will. So that's the goal, and that's what we built. So what if we could not only do that, what if, like I said, it's reusable from school to school? What if you could edit the SQL query? What if it was even faster than making an API query using Power Automate for Blackbaud? What if that was possible, even though it uses the Blackbaud API? So how can that be possible? So we'll look at that. All right, how it works. The architecture of this is, sorry, one second. Yeah, okay. The architecture of this is basically as follows. So we start out with Blackbaud's Sky API. And from there, the real one half of the secret sauce here is this converter. This is a custom piece of software that I wrote that takes an API like this. In this case, we're focusing on the school API, and it converts it into a data warehouse automatically. This means when Blackbaud publishes a new version of the Sky API, you don't have to go in and edit stuff. It's automatically going to be converted. Your data warehouse is going to be rebuilt based on that. So this is really, you'd want to think of this as a read-only data warehouse, right? Because it's going to be torn down, rebuilt every time that Blackbaud is making a change. You need to refresh it, so on. So we put it into a data warehouse, and then blah, blah, blah. We'll look at what happens after that momentarily. But first, I want to look at that. I want to show you that data warehouse. So this is kind of a cool piece of how this all works. So these are ER diagrams of the data warehouse. This is the real data warehouse that was built by this converter app for this presentation and demo and what we're doing here. So this is actually the Blackbaud API as a SQL database. The Blackbaud API, as we've never seen it before. That's my movie trailer version, but it's filled with data by the converter app. That means these tables that you're seeing here, it's kind of hard to see. We have to zoom in, but you're seeing things like department, school levels, and the user departments, what departments the faculty works in. These are automatically filled with data by the converter app, pulled from the Blackbaud API, school levels, users, where they work, all those kinds of different things. So why do we do this? Well, let's go back to our architecture. We've got our data warehouse. What we do after that is we pass two things to AI. In this case, we're using Claude as the AI because it's really good at this. So we pass two things to it. One is the schema of that data warehouse. So all the tables, all the columns that are available in there. And we also pass what you're looking for, your query. I want a list of students with their grade levels and email addresses, whatever. And then we say, Claude, please build us a SQL query that satisfies what this person is looking for. And then we end up with the SQL query. It gives us back the SQL query, and we execute that query, and then we get the results. So this is a list builder, essentially, with all these steps in between that you can see that are actually behind the scenes. But it works in similarly to an advanced list editor, except we don't have to do the drag and dropping. We're just talking to it, and it gives us what we're looking for, ideally. It might not always work, but it's always something that we can tweak if it doesn't. So the reason we use this data warehouse is AI is good at turning natural language into SQL queries. So an example on the left of natural language, meaning English or whatever language you speak. I want a list of students with their email addresses and grade levels. You feed that to the AI. If it has information about your database, it's going to be able to return a SQL query. So this is an actual SQL query that Claude wrote based on that natural language specification. Truncated there a little bit. So notice some cool things here, by the way. I just said I want a list of students with their email addresses, and so Claude inferred, hey, if they need a list of students with something else, we need to know a little bit about the student. So it put over their first name, last name, and we could, if we didn't want that, we could tweak what we sent it and say, hey, please don't include first name, last name, just email address is enough, and it would do that for us. And you can literally say, hey, please, because it understands English. So it's the cool thing about it. And this, you've worked, I'm sure everybody here has experimented with these different AIs and knows how more or less they work. All right, but the proof is in the pudding. Let's do a live demo so you can see. So let me bring up the actual demo app here. All right. So this uses Blackbaud's sandbox environment. Okay, so this is not going against an actual school, so there's no PII going to be exposed here. But same thing that we saw earlier in the pre-recording. What kind of list would you like? Let's start with students in grade 10. So click generate list, and what it's doing is it goes out to Claude AI and it sends it everything, and then we come back with a list. And again, we have the export button. And this is, this is really, we could send this through all kinds of places. This could go to a pipeline in Power Automate. This could go to a server. Right now, we just have the export button for the demo. But again, this is something that you could really put anywhere and have it go into some data pipeline. All right, let's try something else here. I created a test user in the sandbox named Jonagold Honeycrisp because I'm a fan of apples. Not the computer company, although that's cool too, but actual, apples. So let's see if it can find all users named Honeycrisp, and that can be their first or last name. Let's see what it does for that. And again, it sends that query to Claude, and then Claude generates the SQL query and sends us back a list. So this, it just chose these columns. It chose to give us their email. And again, you can tell it what you're looking for, and it'll give you those different things. But I suppose one of the real powerful things here would be when you start to join it with other tables like staff departments and so on and so forth. But here we've got an export button, like I said. So if we click that, click this here, you can see this gives us a nice, hopefully that's, whoops. Excel decided to be really small when it opened. There we go. So we got this data table, basically spreadsheet of, let's do it like that. A spreadsheet of our different users, preferred name. And actually this is accurate because there's, I created multiple users named Jonagold Honeycrisp for different tests. Okay, so that's basically how that works. And then one other thing to point out here is down here, we've got query details, and this actually shows us the SQL query that Claude generated for us. And my next step for this, if this is something that people are interested in, because again, I don't know how people are generating their data today. That's one thing I wanted to talk with people about. But I wanted to eventually make this editable, which it's trivial to do in this application because unlike the advanced list editor, we're not trying to reverse engineer a GUI list of fields and list of objects from this. We just have the SQL query and the English query. So if this is editable, oh, and the other thing is there's no security issues, right? Because with Blackbaud, they're running the SQL against their database. With this is all local. So I mean, if you blow it up, I mean, it's not gonna cause a problem. You just regenerate it. It's basically read-only data based on your Blackbaud data. So you've got your own SQL database that you can query, which, by the way, maybe should be a topic in itself because I think a lot of schools have wanted a SQL database that they can query as opposed to only being able to make API calls. But so yeah, I guess there's probably more than one thing in here maybe that we could look at. But yeah, so this is the query that generates. Editable, I think, would be awesome. You could just add in your own little SQL if you know SQL. Hey, I want to trim this, whatever. So that's something that's forthcoming too. And here's the simplified schema that it sends to Claude for the real technical people who want to ogle this or look at this. This is all the different tables and columns that it's based on the API that it's sending to Claude. Okay, so that's it. That's all I have, really. Just a proof of concept, like I said. But I wanted to start talking to people about it, and I don't know if I have a slide here for Q&A. I don't know, Renee, do we have any questions? I'll turn it over to you and to anybody who has any questions about this, if we do. Renee, are you still with us?
Am I back now?
Yes, there we go.
Here I go. Okay. So Damon was saying he sees that it provides results even if there is not an email.
Yes. So let's go back to it for a second here. So we could say, like for this one, for example, yeah, it's showing that there's no email here. So we could tweak it. Please don't include the user if there's no email, right? Because it's all, it's all English, so it should add that to the query. Let's see what it does. If it doesn't, yeah, there we go. So now if we look at our query details, it's added a where clause. It's added to the where clause to exclude them if there's no email. So I mean, those are things that, like I say, this is one of the hopeful advantages of it, that you can make those changes faster. Whereas with an advanced list, you'd have to go to the filters tab, and now you're selecting email is not blank or whatever. Here, I just typed it in. And if you have this hooked up to your microphone, you can just speak it in. Don't include the user if there's no email address, right? So it's hopefully makes it a little less friction to make some of those kinds of changes. Yeah, that's true. There's so many different ways to play with it and filter it.
Okay. Yeah, there are
Yeah.
a couple other questions in the Q&A. Can you see the Q&A?
Good question. Let me see. Okay, Q&A. I see the tab there. Aha. Okay, yeah. Sorry, got it partially behind my microphone here, so I'm kind of looking over my mic.
Okay, so who is the target audience?
Target audience would be, I think this was posted as low code, and I apologize, I got some deep into some of the technical details of it. But once this goes, if there is a lot of interest in this, depending on if it goes open source, I think anybody could really use something like this. I mean, this interface for it, I would think anybody who wants it could use it. It could be tech, could be your registrar, could be a teacher who needs information. Right. So I think the sky's the limit as far as this part of it. For developers, obviously you can create this without even the open source part if you create your own data warehouse. But I think that's the big lift here, is that a lot of schools hadn't had a data warehouse. And so if there is interest in this and the data warehousing part goes open source, then I still stand by it being low code. If we can get that part open source and easy to use, then I think anybody could use it. Yeah. Good questions.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Let's see. Have you toyed with the possibility of directly connecting with Blackbaud's education management?
Okay, I'm looking at that one now. So Blackbaud Education Management, ODBC. So this is one that I wasn't aware of. And is this an ODBC connection to the school database? I see it says VPNing in. All right, so see, this is part of, that's why I say, that's why I want to reach out, because I don't know what people are doing out there. This is one I didn't know about. So if this is read-only access to your database data, then we could definitely skip the data warehouse creation step. And that would give us even better. I see it says we need a VPN. Okay, so something to look at there. Yeah, that's a great tip. That would smooth out a lot of this, I think. Very good. Any others?
Let's see. Lindsay, this might not be on topic, but in regards to Razor's Edge Blackbaud, is there a way to then save this list with the criteria to be able to rerun it over time?
Yes, that's the plan. To be able to save it, you would have to save it somewhere outside of Blackbaud, which there could be an app for this. There could be something you would download for this, maybe. But you can't save it back to like an advanced list in Blackbaud. Blackbaud just doesn't support that. And you can't save it like to a basic list either. But yeah, you would definitely, if this is fleshed out and people want this would be something you would save somewhere. Either it's a desktop app that facilitates this or some web app or something. Yeah, because that would be a big part of the power of it, right? Being able to reuse it.
Right.
Definitely.
Okay, and yes. I missed one from earlier from Jacob. Have you considered integrating roles into access to different parts of the schema?
Oh yeah, that's an interesting idea too. Yeah, I guess as you open this up to more people, you'd want to have something like that probably to maybe restrict parts of the schema, if that's kind of what you mean, that not just everybody would be able to query everything, but you could have roles where you could say this person has access to the users table. This person doesn't have access to, I don't know, scores or something, test scores maybe. I don't know, whatever that would look like, but that's a good thought. Yeah.
So security-wise, the person using this would need access to the data warehouse?
So not necessarily. You could write it so that only the backend process that fetches this data would need access, but then the person using it, yeah, to that other earlier question, you could have it set up so that certain roles would be able to do certain things and certain wouldn't. But the data warehouse really ends up just as a SQLite database that you have full control over. So you could, I mean, by you, I mean whoever sets this up, your IT department, or if you're just running this on one computer, it could be you. But yeah, so you could have people with less permissions still be able to use it. Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
But now that we've seen the ODBC, I mean, that changes a lot of that side of the architecture. I think the rest would still apply. You'd still want to generate the simplified schema and send it over to an AI. But I'm definitely gonna be looking at that ODBC connection and seeing, okay, what are our options here? Because that could simplify that for sure. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, we've only
Anything
got a
else?
couple minutes left, so if anybody has a quick question. Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Catherine. Last year at BBCon, I was speaking with someone who indicated this type of natural language list making might be available from within Razor's Edge. Thoughts? I have no idea about that. Absolutely no clue on that. So
Yeah, and I not that I'm in Blackbaud like Renee, but I haven't, being a third party, but I haven't heard about that. But it's very well possible because I don't work as much with NXT side as with the school side. But that would be awesome too. Yeah, I think however we can get it is going to be nice when it comes. This would be one way that if it's not available sooner, we could do it like this. If it's available in the interface and Blackbaud is offering that, I think that would be great. A lot of I think the technology is there now where it can be done, and the AI gives me really good results. I'm kind of surprised sometimes by how good Claude is. I've used ChatGPT and some of the others, but I'm really pleased with how Claude is doing for interpreting the answers and giving the right query. So yeah, it's coming, whether by this or that.
okay. Anything else real quick? I am going to put up the survey. Please take time to fill the survey out before you leave the session. We would very much appreciate it. And thank you for attending.
Thank you, everybody. Here's my email address as well if you want to reach out about this. Happy to talk with anybody who's looking at this or interested in it. So appreciate it, everybody.